You're listening to a 3CR podcast created in the studios of independent community radio station 3CR in Melbourne, Australia. For more information, go to allthews.3cr.org.au.
صباح الخير. Good morning, dear listeners. You're listening to Radio 3CR on 855 AM and Palestine Remembered with Robert Martin, Nasser Mashni and Yusuf Ahmed al-Rimawi.
Palestine Remembered is Australia's only English-language radio program that is totally dedicated to Palestine. We'd like to welcome those listening on 855 and those that will join us on podcast at 3cr.org.au.
Thanks for joining us. Stay with us and enjoy the episode.
Good morning, listeners, and welcome to another episode of Palestine Remembered as we tick over now 9 months. We tick over 9 months, 280 days today. Since the genocide began, 280 days of resistance, of perseverance, of enduring strength of the Palestinian people in Gaza, but also all over the world, with all of their friends, allies, comrades in arms as we fight for justice, for Palestine, but also humanity. Make sure you get along tomorrow for our 40th Sunday rally, 40 Sunday rallies in a row, where we have closed Melbourne down for Palestine. It's important that you get out tomorrow. There's many things to come out for. In particular, join Senator Lydia Thorpe and Professor Uncle Gary Foley, who will be both speaking in the last days of NAIDOC week for our black brothers and sisters on this stolen land, on this colony that always was and always will be Aboriginal land. Come out and hear them, but also come out and hear our magnificent Palestinian speakers as well. It's going to be a challenging weather day, but this is the least of the things that we need to worry about when we consider what the people of Gaza are going through. The temperatures are well in the 30s now and at some points touching 40. Gaza City was told to evacuate this week. I'm sure each of you has seen some of the imagery that I've seen of children carrying infants, mothers carrying what they can, being displaced for a fifth, sixth, eighth, even 10th time was one of the stories I heard. The pain is visceral, the pain is real, but it's also transposed here, as we saw during the week, with the kangaroo court of the 20 Melbourne University students, the 20 Melbourne University heroes who got called in to a kangaroo court and were challenged as to why and where and how and who should be what should be acceptable protest. Apparently acceptable protest is perhaps an email, but not too many. A march, but not too long and not too loud. Don't do anything that might disrupt the system, as if protest is supposed to be polite and that anybody ever listens to politeness. Those heroes, we will find out in the coming days exactly what's happening with them, but they know, Melbourne University should know, all of those brownstones should know, that those students will not be defeated. They'll be resolute, and their Melbourne University's actions are in fact empowering a whole other generation of activists who are seeing this hypocrisy, seeing this duplicity play out and won't accept it anymore. We saw the reportage around Russia's bombing of a Ukrainian hospital and the condemnation the world over for Russia's quote-unquote war crimes and crimes against humanity. In the same instances, the language turns immediately passive when we talk about Israel, genocidal Israel, disgusting war on Palestinians. The concentration camp that is Gaza continues. We had a report from Lancet, the most prestigious medical journal, suggesting that based on calculations from other wars, that the death toll now could it be at least 186,000. Many people watching mainstream or listening to mainstream media would see that number of 37,000 has been stuck for some time. And there's a reason it's stuck at that number, is because to qualify, quote unquote, as a actual death, we need to identify your body. We need to identify who you are. Now, Israel has made huge parts of Gaza entirely inaccessible. So anybody that's died there, when the medical people, when the first responders get there, the bodies are so degraded as to not allow for identification. If you bomb a building and there were 10 people in there and 9 people died, and one person survived, he or she might say there were 9 people in that building. But if you bomb a building and all 10 people die, who's to say how many people were there? Over and above which so many Palestinian homes in Gaza have become refugee camps in and of themselves. So there might have been 10 people in that building in September last year, but today it might house 20, 30 or even 40. So the numbers, we know, are going to be truly horrific. And we won't forget, and we will hold those people to account. ANU yesterday has started its disclosure process. The ANU camp is still going on through the winter break, so a big shout out to those students. Also, the shutdown action during the week, we had the electromold, who are part of the global F-35 supply chain. A big shout out for doing what you can to make sure that Australia is not complicit in genocide. Increasingly, the space that perhaps for some time we haven't been thinking about in a movement perspective, but not work that we've forgotten at APAN, we continue to speak about and work with councils. A week ago, the Sydney City Council passed a resolution asking for the bureaucracy to come back with respect to any complicity the City of Sydney might have with apartheid-supporting, genocide-supporting companies. That's true of the ACT government as well now. Marybeck and Derribin are well on their way. In fact, I drove past Marybeck Town Hall yesterday, and the Palestinian flag still waves proudly there. So to all of those that did all that work months ago within the councils, don't stop. The council elections are coming up. When you meet and see your councillors, this is the first chance we're going to get to hold people who are counting on our votes to be responsible for their position on Palestine. So if somebody knocks on your door for a local council election, which are happening in October, ask them their position on the genocide. Are they in support of their council being an apartheid-free zone? Will they demand a ceasefire? That's what democracy is, holding those people to account. As we say in Palestine advocacy, every Israeli accusation ends up being a confession. Every Israeli accusation ends up being a confession. Whether it's human shields, as we've seen all of the pictures of that, whether it be the use of banned munitions, and most recently now, everything we said about the devastation that occurred around the music festival, that it was not Palestinian, has been proved correct. It's now without contention that Israel invoked the Hannibal Directive, which is the most bizarre thing, that they will not allow anybody to be taken captive, and so they'll kill their own people. The blanket bombing, air, land on that music festival, that no doubt when the figures actually come out, will be most of the people were killed by Israel. My friends, we've got a great interview with James Godfrey coming up. I implore each of you not to forget about Palestine, to keep fighting for Palestine. Because if we can achieve freedom for the Palestinians, we can achieve freedom for anyone. And if we fail the Palestinians and Israel completes its colonial conquest, the annihilation of the Palestinian people, then the people who are upholders of these exploitative systems will have achieved their ultimate success, and they'll do that to anyone, anywhere. Stay tuned for James Godfrey from the Freedom Flotilla Coalition in Australia. Make sure you come out tomorrow and from the river to the sea. Palestine will be free.
3CR Radiothon 2024, Sound On for Solidarity.
To donate, call 03 9419 8377 or donate online at 3cr.org.au.
We have a right to be in public space undertaking political activity. That is not something that people should be telling us that we can't do.
Multiple actions rolling over months and years and create huge sustained pressure of social change.
And what we're seeing around the country right now is increasing repression of protest.
Protest works. That's why I think we're seeing it criminalised all over the place.
3CR. Stay tuned, stay radical.
You're listening to 855 AM.
We've got James Godfrey, committed activist, a dear friend of Palestine, and just one of the most wonderful guys you ever might meet. James is part of the Freedom Flotilla Coalition and the Free Gaza movement here in Australia. He's going to talk to us about the upcoming flotilla that is sailing to Gaza to break the siege. I'll say it a few times, but you can go to the link in the podcast, freedomflotilla.org. In the top right-hand corner, you'll find a donate here. On the drop-down, go to Asia Pacific Australia and send money. Firstly, good morning, James. Welcome to the show.
Hi, good morning, Nasser. So nice to be here with you.
Thank you for all of your dedication and work. And James, one of the beautiful things about the Palestine movement, and we talk about it being an anti-colonial, anti-racist space, and about our allies, you come to it from a very beautiful space. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your history before we start talking about the flotilla?
Yeah, certainly, Nasser. I was brought up in a liberal Jewish community in London, in England. My ancestors having fled from Eastern Europe 130 years ago as a result of European racism against Jewish people. And they fled to London as refugees prior to the existence of the Refugee Convention internationally. And they lived in the East End of London, which is a frequent place for migrants to come to. And they lived in small accommodation, and they got a living together and applied a variety of trades in the cloth trade and all sorts of bits and bobs in the East End. Anyway, so I grew up in East London. It was a community where I was aware of things like racism and Jewish people being picked on, but it was very minimal in comparison to what I observed on the streets around me and on the TV, newspapers of black and brown people being attacked, violently attacked, houses being firebombed, people being attacked in the streets by the National Front, the British National Party were on the rise. So although I experienced some degrees of minor racism at school because of, I had to eat different foods at school, that sort of stuff, and different religious observations, it was very minor.
But you've come to the Palestine movement from actual traditions of Judaism, of caring for all, not seeing as an exclusive space.
Yeah, I mean, when I was brought up, that be fair, right, decent, proper, not discriminate. These were very general, routine tenets of the philosophy and the upbringing I had as a kid. When I was out with my mum, we were out walking around, and if she saw a problem or an injustice around, she'd be straight in there and pointing it out, saying that's wrong, that's unfair, in all sorts of things, but particularly way individuals were treated. So it was a very individual thing. Don't pick on the individual. They didn't need to be someone you knew personally. Mm-hmm. If someone who was around you or nearby was being treated in a way or something in the community was wrong, you stood up and you said, no, that there's a problem with it, and pointed out. So I learned early on that this was a fundamental.
The standard you walk past is the standard you accept. Well, your mum did a very fine job, James, a very fine job. James, the flotilla, this is not the first, second or third flotilla. Tell us a little bit about the history of Palestinian activism trying to break this barbaric and illegal siege of Gaza.
Yeah, obviously there's a maritime siege, there's an air blockade, there's a land blockade as well. We've been focusing on the water, so the maritime blockade of Israel of the Gaza Strip. And since the elections now, 18 years ago or so, the Israelis have been increasing the closure of the Strip and the ability of Palestinians to receive materials over land, and the increasing restrictions of fishers being able to go into the Mediterranean Sea to apply their trade to fish to gain nutritional. And we thought that this was an area which is very important. And back in 2007, 2008, the organization prior to us, called predecessor, the Pre-Gaza Movement, sailed several boats, small boats, and they successfully reached the shores of Gaza and were greeted by Palestinian people who hadn't seen visitors for 40 years because the port of Gaza has been closed ever since 1967 for external visitors, for people to come in or go out. So these boats were successful, and the joy was overwhelming for people who saw the international peoples could come and visit. And a larger flotilla was organized in 2010, and that consisted of a lead ship which left from Turkey, named the Mavi Marmara, and several other smaller boats which accompanied it to try and break the blockade in a bigger way in 2010. The Israelis attacked those ships on the 31st of May 2010. People can check out, there's a few documentaries and books around this, but The Truth: Lost at Sea is an excellent one to get a grip as to get an understanding of what happened on that particular mission, and subsequent to it, the Israeli propaganda. And since that time, when the Israelis murdered 10 people, 9 died on the spot, and one several years later having been in a coma. People around the world said, well, this obviously isn't the end of it. Palestinian people in Gaza called for people to keep trying to break the blockade, and groups around the world continue to organize. I got involved in a local group here in late 2010, and we've been organizing to send boats every year or two since then, generally small boats, fishing boats, yachts, and we've been repurposing, renovating them, often from northwestern Europe, and they've been sailing around Europe, sometimes through Europe even, smaller boats through the Canal du Midi in France, and stopping off at different ports on our way to Gaza to challenge the blockade. So we use our boats as a draw point, a focal point for people to say, oh, what's this? Oh, this boat, what's it doing? So we use them as a bit of advertising for what we're doing, a bit of promotion as to where we're going, a learning station so that people can hear stories from our partners in Palestine. So we have 2 partner groups, We Are Not Numbers.org, and the Union of Agricultural Works Committees, who we've been working with for many years. And between them, they either write stories and share stories mainly from young Palestinian people, as We Are Not Numbers, and Union of Agricultural Works Committees, who are working with primary producers, farmers, fishers. So we try and promote the works that they've been doing and the challenges which they have of trying to survive and write and dream and tell people their stories under occupation with the blockade. But each time we travel towards Palestine, we're attacked. So after these long voyages where we pick up and see different people, have events in different ports with different organizations and amplify local projects of solidarity, the final leg, the final mission towards Palestine, we are routinely attacked by the Israeli occupation forces in international waters. And for a brief moment, we experience what it's like to be Palestinian as we head in towards Palestinian waters, and the Israelis attack us routinely.
Shamefully, the West remains complicit in the siege and the genocide, and hopefully the crew is setting sail soon. Listeners, a reminder, freedomflotilla.org, freedomflotilla.org. Top right-hand corner, click on the drop-down box there, Asia, Pacific, Australia, anything you can spare to help those boats, ships, yachts attempt to sail into Gaza to break the siege. And even if they don't get there, they are an exemplar that says, not in my name. They're an exemplar of advocacy and an opportunity for that advertising, as James said before, for people to know what's going on. James, aside from money, and I think it's very important, what else could people do, and what would you ask them to do?
What we see is there's a physical blockade, but there's also an information blockade. And so what's key that people have the different capacities, depending upon who they are and the circles they move in, to challenge, expose the information blockade, rather than just accepting that no one talks about it. And so we give this opportunity to people, with the people putting their bodies on the water, on the line. We have a smallish fishing boat which has just left Portugal on its way to Spain in the Mediterranean now, and called Handala. And so that boat's traveling around. So follow that via all different social media channels, share the stories of what's going on. So look, this is an interesting story. This boat's doing this one, all the different people who are traveling on it. We're putting on board our boats. On the small boats, we're putting on small quantities of some of the banned items, which the Israeli state bans, such as water purification tablets, nail clippers, crutches, maternity kits. We're putting on small quantities, so people should be able to share that sort of news. And we're making some very shareable videos, which are on our different social media channels, on Telegram, on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all those sorts of things. So the information blockade's key to challenging that, and we need eyes on the flotilla. So in order to safeguard the people who are sailing, we need people to be watching and contacting their local members of parliament, be they their individual MPs, their senators, also their state or territory members of parliament, local councillors, contacting the local rate, all the usual advocacy stuff, but drawing their attention to the flotilla, that there are people who are Australian residents and or passport holders who will be travelling on board. We have 3 big ships as well. So 3 big ships in the Eastern Mediterranean. One's a cargo ship capable of carrying nearly 6,000 tons of aid. And we have 2 cruise ships, and they'll be carrying several hundred people. And we were due to travel early this year, but we've been delayed by some bureaucratic obstacles, which often come in the way of the Freedom Flotilla, by international powers that be, who try and stymie our efforts to challenge the blockade. But we're overcoming these bureaucratic hurdles. We will be sailing, and there'll be more Australians than were previously going to sail, and we'll be announcing that soon as people sail. And we often say that when governments fail, we sail, but it's not just about governments failing, it's about international law failing. It's about all sorts of structures which are failing. Every conceivable structure is failing. It's not just about government. Civil society's failing, journalism's failing, because it's allowing this illegal blockade to continue and this genocide to continue. So when all these things are failing, we're sailing.
Brilliant, James. A great way to sum that up. So people can follow you at Free Gaza Australia, Facebook and Instagram. And how do they get to you on Telegram?
Yes, at Telegram, there's a channel which we have, an announcement channel. So if people go into Telegram and they go to FFC, that's for Freedom Flotilla Coalition, _official_ channel. So it's FFC _official_ channel. And it's a Telegram channel, an announcement channel. So there's videos and things appear there. There's some excellent videos and great for sharing with other people and putting up on your own personal media, rather than just clicking a like, rather than just going read whatever. Make your own specific post, make it personal to how why this connects to you, why you're concerned about, why this resonated with you. And those sorts of stories, when you share them one-to-one with friends or amongst your social networks, can have significant influence. That helps challenge the algorithms which we often face, which are limit Palestinian news.
Yeah, indeed. And that's the greatest impact any one person can have, is not clicking like, it's not sharing a video, but it's in fact personalizing something to your own personal circle of influence. When Bob speaks to Mary, that's impactful. And when Mary speaks to Bob, that's impactful. Sure, when NASA says something or James says something, there is an element of perhaps authority because of the organization we might represent, but it doesn't have the same cut through as, somebody speaking at the bowls club or at church or in the union, one-to-one within your own personal spheres of influence. And that's what we really are calling upon. So make sure you follow Freedom Flotilla Coalition and Free Gaza Australia. And if you have capacity, I'd urge everyone to go to the freedomflotilla.org, freedomflotilla.org,
Top right-hand corner in the drop-down box there, choose Asia Pacific, then Australia. Donate whatever you can. James Godfrey from Canberra, thanks so much for everything you're doing, brother. We really appreciate it and can't thank you enough.
It's an honour to be with you, Nasser, and thanks so much for these great shows you do and for all your advocacy and relentless campaigning. It's a privilege to be alongside you in the struggle.
That was James Godfrey from the Freedom Flotilla Coalition. Make sure you go to the podcast, follow those links, support them in any way you can. Send money, send support, download the videos, follow all of their social media pages. And as we said, get out, get proud, get loud for Palestine. Advocate in your spaces, your circles of influence. That's what we need for you to do. Now, friends, Saturday the 20th of July, that's next Saturday at 5:50, there'll be a 60-minute film called Palestine Under Siege. Palestine Under Siege. It'll be at Cinema Nova in Carlton, Saturday the 20th of July at 5:50. If you go to Cinema Nova, their website, cinemanova.com.au, you'll be able to buy tickets for it. It's called Palestine Under Siege. We need it to sell out. We're desperate for it to sell out because that'll give it a run. Peter Slezak is part of the documentary, as well as many others that you will have been on the show along the way. They speak to Hanan Ashrawi as part of it as well. So that's Saturday the 20th of July at 5:50. There'll be a Q&A afterwards. Be sure to get along and watch Palestine Under Siege, 20th of July next Saturday at 5:50, Cinema Nova. You can get tickets at cinemanova.com.au. Peter Slezak, Hanan Ashrawi and many other people who've been on our show. Get along to it. After the movie, there'll be a Q&A as well. So hope you can get along and join us. Thanks for listening. Share the podcast. Tell your friends. And remember, there's never been a better time for a free Palestine.
What's taking place in Palestine is horrendous. The people of Gaza, who have survived ethnic cleansing, 3 wars and a 16-year siege, are now facing the biggest attacks ever mounted against them.
This will only stop if governments like ours demand that it stop. Here are some ways that you can keep yourself informed and involved.
Listen in to Palestine Remembered every Saturday morning at 9:30 a.m. or listen to the podcast.
Join the APAN mailing list at apan.org.au for updates, news about actions you can get involved in, and where you can donate to provide humanitarian assistance.
Listen to other news and current affairs programs on 3CR that also cover Palestine.
The oppression of the Palestinian people has been going on for 75 years. It has to stop. You can be part of making that happen by staying informed and active.
APAN is a proud supporter of 3CR.
You've been listening to a 3CR podcast. If you found it valuable, please consider donating or subscribing to support independent community radio. To find out more, go to 3cr.org.au.